Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Bryan, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. You know, one question I ask every guest on Everyday Martial Artist is about their favorite martial arts book. And there's never been one quite like Martial Theory by Steve Pearlman, described as the art of war for the martial arts. Martial Theory helps any martial artist or instructor take their understanding and teaching to the next level. And at martialtheoryu.com, you'll find a global community with instructor groups, Q&A with Steve, live events, and demonstrations to help you apply martial theory directly to your training. It's not just a book, it's a movement. Find Martial Theory on Amazon, and when you join martialtheoryu.com, use discount code EverydayMA for 20% off. That's under $20 a month for life. That's martialtheoryu.com, code EverydayMA. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Bryan, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today has spent nearly 5 decades dedicated to the preservation and teaching of traditional Okinawan karate, building a lifelong reputation for disciplined instruction, authentic training methods, and practical self-defense. A Nanadan and Shorin Ryu Shorinkan, and a longtime student of Eddie Bethea Kyoshi, he is the founder and chief instructor of Franz Karate, where he's devoted more than 35 years to developing students through traditional martial arts training rooted in strong fundamentals, technical precision, and real-world application. In 1991, he established Franz Karate with the goal of creating a full-time traditional dojo environment that emphasized proper progression, character development, and long-term growth in the martial arts. Today, the organization operates locations in Bryan, Ohio, Auburn, Indiana, and continuing to serve generations of students under his leadership. Over the course of his career, he's become known for his direct, principle-based teaching style and his commitment to preserving the values of the heart of Okinawan karate, including discipline, respect, perseverance, and personal responsibility. His influence can be seen not only in the technical ability of his students, but in the lasting impact they carry with them beyond the dojo floor. Please welcome my guest today, Mr. Stephen Franz. How you doing today, Stephen?
I am doing fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. I know I say this to all my guests, but I mean, I know how busy people are. I'm a dad. I have 3 kids. I have family obligations. I know how tough it is to schedule these things. So anytime one of my guests is willing to do it, I truly, truly appreciate it. So I really appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to learning more about you.
I'm looking forward to talking because I don't really ever get to do this.
Well, that's even better. I'm excited to be your first podcast. I think it's going to be fun. And I mentioned over 5 decades in martial arts, but the first thing we want to know is, and my listeners are interested in, how it started, where that first interest in martial arts came from, kind of that spark that kicked off your martial arts journey.
I was a young rambunctious kid in 1978, and definitely today they would have referred to it as ADD, but back then it was called hyperkinetic syndrome. Definitely knew the difference between right and wrong, but I typically allowed my temper to get the best of me, and my parents were looking for ways to teach me to control that. And I went to see a child counselor in Defiance who happened to be a black belt at Bulls Karate in Defiance, Ohio.
Oh.
And he had recommended to my dad to possibly put me in martial arts. And my dad's like, I don't think he needs to hurt people more. And he said, that's not what it's about. So I tried a free class there. Okay. That was the school that was downtown in Defiance, Ohio. It was headed up by Denny Wagner. And it was about a 3-hour Saturday afternoon session. Didn't know the first thing about karate. Got dropped for push-ups quite a bit during that class because I talked. And my dad really enjoyed watching how that worked. And we eventually found a school closer because we wouldn't have been able to afford that. It was very expensive. Mm-hmm. The big city karate schools were.
Yeah.
And in that era, there were not a lot of karate schools in the small rural towns like what we lived in. Mm-hmm. you didn't have much of a choice. If you wanted to do karate, you were going to drive 35, 40 minutes to drive to get to it. So we found a small dojo that was in Angola, Indiana. It was teaching Gojo Ryu. The instructor at the time was a brown belt. He was in the military and just had come back, but he had gotten a job as an architect up at one of the firms, and my dad did a landscaping job for him, and they kind of traded. So that I got a couple of years of karate for some of the money off of the landscaping job, because my parents owned a landscaping company.
Okay.
And that was how I actually got into it. And I spent the next 3 years pretty much being a dojo rat there. Every Tuesday, Thursday, hardly ever missed a class. I was the only kid. Everybody else was these big motorcycle riding, factory working, banging, love to fight guys. I mean, it was crazy. But they treated me like family. You know, I was like everybody's little brother. So I got picked up by my belt and carried around quite a few times during class. It was just really neat. But the environment, the training, there was just something that clicked with me, and I've been doing karate ever since.
So that very first one where you did the 3-hour intro class, I mean, you said you had to do push-ups and stuff because you weren't listening that while you were talking. Did you actually enjoy, was it your choice after that to continue on, or was it your dad's choice to find you a school to go to?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I kept begging.
Oh, nice.
You know, because it was just, we did these drills, and I think they call them tewaza and Shorin Ryu. And the contact back and forth, and the kid I was working with was a little bit older than me, but I really enjoyed the drills. It was like a yakusoku kumite, an exchange of sparring techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really clicked with me, was getting out there and having to memorize something without getting nailed. Because back then, you know, karate was a lot different. If you didn't pay attention, or you were screwing around, or your partner was getting frustrated, you would probably get nailed.
Yep.
Most of the time. But the kid that was with me worked with me really well, and I enjoyed it so much that I just was hooked instantly on it. And luckily, Gojo Ryu is that type of an environment. There's a lot of body conditioning and contact drills and hands-on application. So that was my first experience in Okinawan karate, and it really stuck with me.
And you said before that, you said you knew nothing about karate. Now, as a kid, had you watched any kung fu movies? Had you seen Bruce Lee, like Green Hornet, or was it completely new to you that day?
Yeah, I had seen the Green Hornet.
Okay.
The only movie I believe that my dad had that was Chuck Norris related at the time might have been Good Guys Wear Black, which was like one of his first movies.
Yep.
And we watched that after I had gone and done that karate class. And I was just like enamored by that too, you know, but everything was back then was either VHS or Laserdisc, and we had a Laserdisc, so you had to rent them. And the movie really didn't make a lot of sense to me because I didn't watch the movie. I watched the fight scenes.
Yeah, of course.
I hate saying that, but I don't remember much about the movie. I have that movie. I've just never watched it since.
That's funny. I mean, I was probably the same back then. There's a lot. I watched a lot of martial arts movies when I was a kid, but there's a lot of them until maybe I got to about the age of 10. But before that, I was like, yeah, I remember the fight scenes. I couldn't tell you anything about the plot. So,
yeah, okay. I agree.
So then the second one where you found that home for a few years, talk about the first couple classes. What was it about that instructor that stood out? What are some of the things you worked on, and maybe compare it to that first 3-hour class, kind of how different they were and stuff. And what were some of the things that happened?
The structure was completely different. When I did the free class at Bowles Karate, it was line up, bow in, and then probably 40 minutes of exercises, throwing punches, kicks in the air, a bunch of other stuff like that. And it was very strict and very formal, very military-like. Everybody was assembled in lines and just very, very, very to the point. And with the Gojo Ryu guy, he was teaching in a pole barn. It was a shed in his backyard, and it was more relaxed environment. I mean, we would line up, we would do some jumping jacks, we do some push-up setups and things like that. And then we do a little bit of Kodakide body conditioning and just really enjoy it. But the main focus with him was kata.
Okay.
So the first year that I was training with him, the only kata that I was learning, and he skipped right over the Geki Sai kata. He taught me those later, but I started out with Sanshin.
Oh, okay.
And then the second kata, the second year, was Seisan. And those were the only 2 kata that I ever actually learned from him.
Wow.
He just didn't let us do kata randomly like it is today, where everybody can jump on a kata and get their next belt and then they're into a new kata. He made us stick with them until we got him to his satisfaction. So it was a lot different, but he was very supportive, encouraging, especially considering the fact that I was the only kid in the school.
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't get to spar until I had a year of training.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because they didn't wear gear.
Yeah.
There wasn't playtime with it, and they swept and they threw. It just was not designed for that. But I got to watch them spar, and there was times that I was scared to death that when my day came, because these guys are giving each other fat lips and bloody noses, and they're laughing about it. And I'm sitting here, I'm going to die.
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, that was it.
Now, you mentioned being the only kid. How long did that last? How long before someone else your age joined, or did that not happen during those 3 years?
No, nobody did at that particular school. He, like you said, he didn't really advertise. He just kind of picked up students here and there. Mostly guys that worked at the same company that he worked at, and then eventually he announced he had a student who'd made it to brown belt, and he said that he was moving away. He was taking a job in Chicago, and he gave the school to the brown belt, but the brown belt, that guy didn't want to run it. He come out and told us, he goes, I'm gonna find somebody to train under. I'm not interested in running the school. I don't want to teach.
Dang.
So I went for about 6 months roughly, where I was just practicing at home on my own, and we were trying to find another school. And fortunately, another school opened up in Angola around that same time, which would have been about pretty close to 82.
Okay.
But it was Taekwondo. However, it was a labeled Taekwondo. It was Korean Shotokan.
Oh, okay.
We learned the Shotokan kata. They even called them by the Shotokan names.
Wow.
We were a mixture of hands and feet. We didn't have the heavy emphasis on kicking like a lot of the Taekwondo schools known today do. So it was a lot different. And that instructor was very much Cobra Kai-esque, so to speak.
Okay.
It was just about kicking ass and taking names. He didn't play around, and we were a competitive school. Go to a lot of tournaments. It was interesting.
Yeah. So the Goju school, first of all, what belt level did you get to there? And then do you remember your very first belt test?
I made it to yellow belt, but that was the only belt. The belts were yellow, green, brown, black.
Okay.
And I got my yellow belt about a year and a half after starting, and there wasn't a test. It was during class. I got called up to the front. He had me demonstrate Sanshin and demonstrate what I could do of Seisan, and then he had me do some of the bunkai drills that he taught. And then we did a little sparring at the end of the class, which I'd only been sparring, I think, for a month and a half at that time. I was really young. I don't remember. And then at the end of the class, he called me up and he took my white belt off, and I thought I was in trouble. I had no clue what was going on. And then he pulled out of his gi a yellow belt and wrapped it around my waist. And even today, when I think about that first belt test, I get a little bit teary-eyed because I had no idea what was going on, and it meant the world to me.
That's awesome. Do you still have that yellow belt somewhere?
Yes, I do.
Very cool. Yep. I still have my very first orange belt I ever earned in a system. So that's cool that you hang on to those. So the Taekwondo school then first of all, the Goju school, did you ever do competition in Goju, or was your first time competing when you joined the Taekwondo school?
Oh, no, I did. My first tournament was the Three Rivers Festival tournament hosted by Bulls Karate in Fort Wayne in 1980. I don't remember I think it was July.
Okay.
And I had no idea what I was doing because the sensei I had at the time, Sensei Smith, he did not teach competition karate. The tournament was local. He was a member of the USK, as all of us were. And he mentioned that it was a USK event. And he said, we're going to go to this and you guys are going to compete. So we showed up to school, loaded up the van, all went together as a school, which is how it was back then. These days, not so much. Everybody kind of shows up on their own. And I walked in and I didn't have a uniform. I'd been training in T-shirts and shorts up until that point. And I went over to the table and bought a uniform. Fun note on that one, I actually bought the uniform from the person who became my Shorinkan sensei.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. And put it on, had no idea how to tie a white belt, nothing.
Yep.
And it came time to do kata. He says, just watch what everybody else does. I'll never forget this, and do what they do.
Really?
I was like, okay. Well, I got called out as the first person to run kata, so I had no idea. I just got up, walked in the ring, walked up to the judges, and I just stood there looking at them.
Wow.
And I had somebody who became one of my good friends as a mentor many years later. Judy Wade is the center, and she told me what to do.
Okay.
And the experience was unique. And of course, I did not place. I did not do well at all.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And then when it came time to do kumite, we still were in the early ages of adopting gear. in this area. So I actually borrowed hand gear from one of the other competitors, but they didn't care if I had foot gear or not. I did have a mouthpiece, however.
Okay.
And they said go, and I just ran in and hit the kid as hard as I could, and I got disqualified.
Wow.
Well, that's what I saw him do in the dojo, so I had no idea that you weren't supposed to hit the face, number one, and I had no idea that you weren't supposed to hit as hard as you could. I thought the goal was to knock the person out.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, yeah.
So I got disqualified, and I got reprimanded pretty hard by the center official. I don't know who he was. I can't remember him. Literally yelled at, and told to leave the ring.
Wow.
And I went over and sat down, had no idea what was going on. But my sensei told me, he explained it to me. He says, when you compete in tournaments, the goal is you can hit the body a little hard, but you're not supposed to hit the head at all. And if you do, it has to be controlled. You have to pull it. You know. Wow. So if you're going to go to any more tournaments and stuff, you need to learn to do that. And he goes, and I can work with you on that at the dojo a little bit.
Wow.
And from 80 till about late 82, I maybe hit 2 tournaments a year, maybe 3.
Okay.
And I never placed in any of them. I never did any good. No matter how much I trained to do my best, I never did any good. But I had no coordination. I had no athleticism. I was that kid that most instructors probably would have gave up on and said, I hope this kid quits. You know, but fortunately for me, neither one of the first 2 instructors I ever had, nor my sensei I have now, ever did. They just pushed and pushed and pushed.
And did you only ever try kumite and pattern? Was there other, did they have weapons? Did they have breaking?
I don't remember having weapons for beginners.
Okay.
There was no breaking.
Okay.
Not local tournaments. Matter of fact, I don't remember. I think the first time I went to a tournament that offered breaking would have been probably 91 or 92. Wow. And that was a bigger tournament. That was a national tournament.
Okay. Nice. All right. So then fast forward to the Taekwondo school. Talk a little bit about that. I know you said it was more on the Shotokan side and stuff. And how long were you there? I'm assuming you had to start over at white belt. And how long were you there before you got into the competition at that school?
Oh, I trained with that particular instructor all the way up until I opened my own school in 91.
Wow.
Got my Shodan in November 7th of 1987. And as a brown belt, I competed a lot.
Okay.
We went to 7 or 8 tournaments a year before that. I didn't start doing well in tournaments until 84.
Okay.
And we were at a tournament in Muncie, Indiana, competed in kata, and I got first place. And I'd never won a trophy before that point in time. And from that day forward, I hardly ever left a tournament without a trophy.
And what do you, for that first win, what do you think was different? Was it just experience?
I paid attention more.
Okay.
I matured a lot, and I started, instead of going to tournaments and doing what I thought I should do, I started watching what the kids that were winning were doing.
Okay.
And then I would go back and I would work on my presentation. I would work on my stances, work on my delivering of technique to make them adjusted, because I was very rough up until that point. I think I just adjusted myself to train to win because I wanted to win. I didn't want to keep going to tournaments and coming home empty-handed.
Mm-hmm. And then you said you stayed with him until you opened your own school. Now, like, did you, even like when you went to college, or did you have to take a break, or how did that all happen?
Oh yeah. I went to college at Vincennes University in Vincennes, Indiana from 1989 till late 90.
Okay.
And I started a karate club down there. They didn't have one.
Nice.
Long story short on this one, because I don't want to get into semantics on it, but the only school that was available is at the YMCA, and it was an ATA school.
Okay.
And I thought, well, they said Taekwondo, I'm going to go there, I'm going to check it out. So I went to the YMCA, and I got to do like a week of free training with them, and I did. And I did not enjoy it. I just wasn't being challenged there, and I said, you know what, I don't really like this. So one day I was out in the quad in between the dorms, because they had an all-male dorm and all-female dorm for first-year students, and we had a big central quad, and was practicing forms. I was just out there working on my black belt form, Paul Gay Pacheng, and doing some other stuff. And this little Japanese guy comes up to me, and he starts talking to me, and I do Shotokan. And I was like, oh, cool. And we had this long conversation, and then we started doing kata together, and then we started sharing techniques together. And then 2 or 3 more people started showing up as we were doing this, because it was like an everyday thing for us at lunchtime.
Nice. Okay.
And next thing you know, we're like, I wonder how we could get a karate club going. And I went to the student council body for activities and asked them, and they said, you need to get an academic sponsor. Well, I found somebody who was a black belt that taught at the university.
Cool.
He sponsored us, and we started the Vincent's Tiger Karate Club.
Very cool. Did it keep going after you left?
It did. I went back several times over the years just for fun, just to see people and meet people. And because that first year, of course, we had our officers, and I was the president. Then there was Junichiro, who was the Japanese guy I talked to. He was the vice president, and then Shinasako was the secretary. It was fun. And I went back several years, and I believe the last time I heard that it was still going was in '97, if I remember correctly. I don't know if they have one now or not.
Okay. So. That's kind of, I mean, it's kind of cool that you started it and it lasts that long. So that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, it was really neat. And then I ran into people at karate because I was competing all over the place. I'd run into people in Kentucky that were at Vincent's, and we got talking, and they're like, yeah, I went to Vincent's and they had a karate club. And we had like, oh, really? I started that. Well, you see Franz? Yeah. I'm like, oh, wow.
That's awesome. See, you are well known. Really That's good.
Oh, no, I'm not well known.
What belt level and kind of where in your journey did teaching become something that was interested to you? You thought maybe you'd enjoyed. I know a lot of my guests are like, I never wanted to, and it just fell into it. I'm just curious, how does your story fit around the teaching side of martial arts?
I always tell my students that I was the world's most reluctant sensei because I got thrown into teaching the kids class as a brown belt.
Okay.
Because the instructor I had didn't want to do it. Because
Nice.
the Karate Kid had gotten big, so the kids class went from 3 or 4 kids to like 16, 17 kids. You know, and he seen that I had a lot of patience and I enjoyed working with him because I took a class one day because he was late because he had a regular job. And I did. I taught the kids class all the way from brown belt till I graduated high school in '88 and enjoyed it. Absolutely loved it. And I think that's kind of what led me into wanting to teach, but I never wanted to pursue it as anything other than a sideline hobby. When I graduated from Vincent's, I went to Ball State first semester, then I went to IU first semester, and then I went to IUPUI in Indianapolis first semester due to jobs. I was going where I could get work because I put myself through school.
Okay.
And I finished up at IUPUI and I said, I'm going to take a year break. I'm going to move home. I'm not really enjoying this academic ride. I would like to go back home and just work and get back to training and see my friends. So I moved back home and I started teaching at the school for that instructor. And I learned really quickly since I was an adult now, I was almost 21, that he wasn't the person that I had grown up thinking that he was and stuff, because I got to know him on a personal level. So we clashed very heavily,
okay,
especially on how we wanted to run the school, because I had gotten experience with my college people, like with June. June ended up working out with me for Junichiro Takanami was his name. He ended up working out with me and coming and visiting me many times over the years until he passed away in '07.
Okay.
And he was trained in Okinawan karate as well as in Shotokan, and his father was a big Okinawan karate guy. Just loved it. Their family all did it. So I had experience on how he taught, and he was such a laid back, easygoing guy, but he was right to the point and very serious when he taught karate. There was no playing around, but he wasn't mean or abusive or pushy, so to speak.
Okay.
And when I came back and I had actually taken over the school, because the instructor at the time, he was a correctional officer, plus he was a U.S. Marshal, so he was struggling to be able to maintain keeping the school going and asked me to do it. Plus, we were a kickboxing school. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I ran it for about 7 months. And I had gotten to the point, I said, I don't like this. I'm not comfortable with this. Just something inside me told me it wasn't a good fit. So I told him I was leaving. I said, I don't care who you give the school to or anything like that. I'm not interested in doing this no more. And that was in November of 1991.
Okay.
And I was very intent that I was just going to hang up my belts. I'm going back to college in February. I thought that I just wanted to get out of karate altogether. I wasn't really competing. I wasn't doing anything with it. It just wasn't enjoyable. And then I walked into a bar. And we had a very famous bar in this tiny little town of Hicksville called the Palace. To give you an example of some of the bands that played there before they were well known, we got Huey Lewis and the News, Van Halen. These bands were garage bands at the time they played at this place.
Okay.
So all my friends went there. I wasn't a big drinker, but I went with them, and been going there for a few months. And that particular night, a fight broke out on the floor. Well, one of my friends, who was a black belt at another friend's school, was a security guy there. He was a bouncer,
Okay.
and they were having problems dealing with this because it wasn't two or three guys fighting. It was 15, 16 people fighting in the floor.
Wow.
And my buddy Dan, he goes, "Hey, Franz, get over here and help us out." So I walked in and I kicked this guy right in the head right off the bat and knocked him completely out. And next thing you know, I got guys just beating the hell out of me, but I'm beating back. It was back and forth. It was no roadhouse situation. It was bloody. And they offered me a job bouncing there after that night. And I turned them down. I said, no. I said, this is not something I'm interested in doing. And they're like, well, we'll pay you $100 a night. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, what? How much? That's a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm like, I'll think about it, you know. But the girl at the front door asked me if I'd be interested in teaching her self-defense and teaching her kids self-defense, the door girl. And I was like, no. And she said, oh, come on. I said, no. And I said, she begged and pleaded. She goes, I got a dance studio. It's perfect. You don't have to pay any rent. You just have to cover the utilities. Just teach us karate. I said, okay. So I started teaching them on December 1st of 1991.
Okay.
And 5 or 6 of my friends that I grew up with and some that I graduated high school with found out I was teaching karate. And they're like, we want to sign up and do it too. So the next thing you know, I got a full adult class. I got like 11 students.
Nice.
And I taught every Tuesday and Thursday night. Our classes were about 4 hours long. And it just kind of led into me doing it on a regular basis. And I've been teaching on my own ever since. I've had a school ever since I opened that one up. But I never did it full time until 2004.
Okay. What led to the decision to do it full time?
I grew up in that environment where the instructors, it was their part-time adventure. So they never saw it as a business.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know the first thing about business. You know, the first year my school was open, I didn't file taxes on the money I made.
Nice.
I didn't know you were supposed to.
That's awesome.
You know, and then I had people coming in and I was an idiot. They'd say, well, I'm going to get sparring gear. So I'd order it and I'd pay for it out of my pocket. And then they never paid me for it after I gave it to them. You know, I just was a total idiot. I didn't know the first thing about running a business. So I set out a goal to myself that I was going to learn how to run a business. And I started working in the tech industry, which is what I went to schools for, and worked myself into where I was managing a startup company.
Okay.
And I learned a ton about contracts. I learned a lot about taxes. I learned about accounting. I learned marketing. I learned everything I could get my hands on. Because, like I said, I do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And my school started growing because of that, because I was implementing that in my schools as well. Because at the time I had 4 locations.
Wow.
So, and my black belts were helping me. I wasn't teaching all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, this is great. But I also remember them saying, you'll never make a living teaching karate. So I always wanted to have an extra job, a sideline job,
Yep.
you know, as my career. And then I met Herb Johnson. He's from Indianapolis, and he had like 7 schools, I think he had 5 or 6 schools at the time in Indianapolis. And this guy is a marketing karate guru, but he teaches legit karate, but he makes a huge living at it. And we got into a conversation, and he says, you should be teaching full time. He says, your students are so good and you do so well, you shouldn't be working for other people. You know, and this is about 2002.
Okay.
And I'm like, I don't think I want to. I like the fact that I have a good income and I'm debt free. I don't have any bills. I don't want to put myself in that environment. And he says, no, trust me. He says, you can do this. So he kind of gave me the outline of how to do it. He educated me on how to do membership agreements and all this other stuff. But I didn't listen to everything he said because I didn't agree with the nickel and diming that the big schools do. You know, with me, I always wanted it to be one price and that's it. I never wanted to charge belt exam fees. I didn't want to have black belt programs and upgrade programs. And you want to spar, you got to buy a sparring upgrade. I didn't want to do any of that kind of stuff.
Right.
So he kind of leaned on me a little bit and really influenced me to do it because the man's an amazing man. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years back, but he was just an amazing man, very giving. He was a USK world champion. In the 1980s, he was a power force of karate.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know, I've been working for this company now for the last 4 years. I've invented several things for them. and they've ripped me off of the patents for it, and I'm just done. I don't want to work for anyone anymore. If I'm going to do something and I'm going to put my name on it, I'm going to do it for me. I am not doing it for other people. I would rather go broke and be happy with what I do than continue to work in this tech environment where I'm being used left and right, and they're making millions off me and I'm making nothing. I'm done. So I walked in on Good Friday in 2005 and told the boss guy, I'm quitting. And he was like, okay, didn't care one bit because we're replaceable. That's how they are.
Wow.
And even though I was a general manager of the company, I just was like, whatever. And I've been teaching karate full time ever since.
Nice. Think back to those very first classes where you taught, as a brown belt and you were teaching the kids classes, to now you've been running your own school all these years. What do you think has changed the most about your teaching style over all that time?
I've gotten more understanding and more patient.
Okay.
When in the 1980s, when you taught karate class, it was very militant. It was very disciplined. Nobody talked back to you. Nobody disrespected you. You're a black belt. You drop them they look at you sideways. You drop them for push-ups.
Yep.
And I will say this: the environment I grew up in, the karate, we were abusive. When we sparred, if you hit us hard, we'd take your head off. Even if you were a 14-year-old and I'm a 17-year-old, I would take your head off. That's the environment I grew up in, and I'm not like that at all. I am definitely not the same person I was. The first 2 years, well, actually 3 years that I ran my karate school, I couldn't figure out why I couldn't keep students. I just couldn't understand it. And some of it was the way we sparred, because number one, my mentality was not in the right place, because every new student that came in was fresh meat for me to experiment on. I had that mentality. That's what I was trained in. So what ended up happening was I was at a karate tournament in 1993, and I went up and talked to Eddie Bethea, who's my sensei now. He's known me since I was little, all these years. He was always mentoring me and giving me advice and telling me things and stuff. Just an amazing man. And I told him, Sensei, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I said, I can't get over 15 students no matter what I do. And when I get new students, they make it 3 months and they quit. And he looked me right in the face and he goes, are you teaching the way you were taught? And I said, yes. He goes, there's your problem. And this is coming from Kyoshi Eddie Bethea, multi-time USK world champion, living, breathing, walking legend in Indiana karate. And I'm thinking, well, how do you teach? That's my response. And he goes, I never give anybody anything I'm not willing to do myself or take myself. He says, so if you're beating on the students, you need to stop that. Number one, you need to teach them. It's not about you showing off how great you are. It's about how great you make them. And that has stuck with me my whole life. Since that day we had that conversation, and I immediately set about changing the way I taught karate.
Nice.
And next thing you know, I went from 15 students in Hicksville, Ohio, population 1,800. I went from 15 students to over 30 students.
Nice.
And they were staying 2-3 years. Several of them got black belts. It was just a simple conversation with a man who knew what he was doing that changed my entire outlook on what being a sensei meant.
That's cool. You mentioned a few of them getting black belts. So do you remember your very first student that you personally brought from white all the way to black?
Yes, she was the girl that worked the front door at the bar.
Really?
Yeah, Christy Rodacher.
That's awesome. Okay. Is she still training?
She is. She got out of doing karate, went into MMA. Her and her husband now both had a hammer house with Mark Coleman for a while.
Okay.
And then eventually she got into doing government contracting, and they were training and working with law enforcement and federal authorities on hand-to-hand tactical fighting.
That's really cool. And I'm assuming you're still in contact and stuff?
We still talk, yeah.
That was cool.
We don't do anything karate-wise together, but she got up to her go-down and took off and did her own thing, which I had no problem with. I don't control my students. They can choose their path.
That's really cool. And then, looking on your website, looking kind of through your martial arts resume, when did the cross training start with you? And I know you had done a couple other styles and stuff like that, but when did I'm noticing a belt in judo and jujitsu and aikido? I mean, when did the cross training become an interest of yours?
The cross training all started because of happenstance. Being in karate in this area, there's so few people that have schools back then that we all knew each other and we all kind of got along. I ended up doing judo because the guy that ran the judo program at the Defiance, Ohio YMCA wanted me to come in and teach striking clinic.
Okay.
on a Saturday. And I said, well, if I do I get to do judo class with you guys for free? And he said, absolutely. So I did the judo class. And oh my God, this is awesome. And I trained with them for 5.5 years.
Nice.
Just because I enjoyed it so much. And then the Shorin Ryu Jiu-Jitsu I got into was because Matt Steffen, who was my sensei, I know Matt since he was a white belt in karate. He was a white belt in Shorin Ryu with Bulls Karate.
Mm-hmm.
And I just absolutely adored and enjoyed working out with his group because we sparred a lot. And I invited him to come to my dojo to teach Shorin Ryu because I had some students who wanted to do it on a Sunday. And that led to me getting up to, I think I got to my first Q brown belt with Matt. I never got my black belt in Shorin Ryu.
Okay.
But that led me to finding Danzan Ryu, and I ended up getting a black belt in Danzan Ryu.
Okay.
And I've never stopped cross training. I got into Krav Maga for many years because I was a bodyguard for quite a few years. Anything anybody was willing to share with me, I was willing to share back, and it led to a lot of friendships, and I ended up cross training. That's the easiest way to put it. It wasn't like I was going out seeking it. It just kind of happened. Like I said, all happenstance.
Okay. I noticed also some Kabuto on there too. So
yeah,
okay.
The Kobudo is a little bit of a different story.
Yeah.
Back in the 1970s and 80s, how Kobudo ran was you took a weapon that you liked and you ran an empty hand kata using that weapon.
Okay.
There wasn't a lot of formalized Kobudo in those days. And that's how I learned it. So I enjoyed the sai. The sai were my first weapon. And I would go out and I'd run, say, San no sai at a lot of tournaments. And being Taekwondo, we didn't have Kobudo. We did not train with weapons.
Oh, really?
So,
okay.
So I kind of picked things up. And then Kyoshi Bethea would come up because he was friends with the instructor I had in Taekwondo, and he would teach during the summers. And I picked up Sushi no Kon and Sakagawa no Kon and some other bokatas from him. I was the only one from our school that actually competed in weapons. Everybody else just did the seminars and forgot it. Me, I drilled it. So my first actual official Kobudo class in an actual recognized Kobudo style was with Kyoshi Bethea. We were at a karate tournament, and after the tournament was over, he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Nothing." He says, "You want to go work out?" And I said, "Absolutely." So we went back to his dojo, and what was supposed to be, an hour workout turned into 3 hours long of him teaching me Shiguro no Kama.
Nice.
And I left that day knowing that kata. I sucked at it, but I knew it. And then we had a conversation a couple tournaments later, and I said, well, I'm coming to Kokomo for these tournaments all the time that you guys are doing. The PKC was doing tournaments, and I was a PKC promoter. And I said, how about if I come down on Friday nights, and would you be willing to teach me privately, Kobudo? And he said, absolutely. And he never asked for any payment, never asked me to pay him anything. He just asked for me to be a good student. I was like, okay. And I knew out of the 13 Kobudo kata, I knew 10 of those before I ever knew the Shorinkan kata, because I learned Kobudo before I learned Shorinkan from him. But that's what led me into doing Shorinkan with him, was I wanted to learn their version of Goju Shiho, because I had learned it under a different name from somebody else. And he taught me Goju Shiho, and then that led to him teaching me the other katas. And that's how I ended up in the Shorinkan. So my Kobudo led me into my pathway into Shorinkan.
Okay. Traditional Taekwondo is my core system I've been doing since '94 with my current instructor. But we've always done weapons training. We do nunchuck, we do staff, we do 3-sectional staff, we do sai, we do tonfa, we do danbong. I mean, just a series of weapons. And it's weird when I talk to people with Taekwondo background that don't do weapons. So, because to me it's just normal. But after doing this show, I realized that everyone does it different.
Yeah, so. I mean, a lot of the Taekwondo schools back when I was coming up, they picked up weapons by going to seminars with like Kyoshi Bethea and other people. The organization that I belonged to, headed up by Fred Walliser, was called the American Midwest Taekwondo Association.
Okay.
And Fred Walliser and Mr. Steve Van Camp were really good friends with Philip Keppel from the USKK. So they did a lot of weapons training with him. Okay. And that kind of led into us learning those things like Tokumini no Kon and some other katas. So we were basically learning weapons, Kobudo katas. We didn't know the first thing about what Kobudo was, but we were learning the weapons katas, and then we were going back and we were training what we could remember of them and competing with them, and we were doing pretty well with them too.
Nice. So is there what's your favorite weapon you've ever got to train with?
Believe it or not, it's the Eku or the Kai, whatever you want to call it, the paddle.
Oh, really?
I absolutely love that weapon because it's so... That weapon is different than any other weapon in Kobudo because it has a specific blade side and a specific paddle side. And when you execute the kata, you have to know which side belongs where.
Wow.
when you're doing it. So there's a lot of manipulation with it. And you've got to be aware of your weapon at all times, because if you do it incorrectly, the weapon doesn't function as it's supposed to, especially if you're like supposed to be scooping sand and throwing it in somebody's face.
Yeah.
If you have the paddle side up, the sand just falls off. If you got the blade side up, because of friction, you can shovel a whole shovel full of sand in somebody's face.
Okay.
You know, so it's a complicated weapon to me. Second would be side.
Nice. And how about a weapon that you've maybe never trained with but always wanted to, or maybe you've got to a couple times but you'd like to do it more?
I've played with pretty much everything out there. I've done Eskrima and Kali and all the other stuff. The only one I don't have a lot of experience with is that Tenbi, the tortoiseshell shield and the short sword.
Oh, okay.
I've done that once in all the years, and I've always been fascinated by it because you see it when you go to Okinawa all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to me that they would take a tortoise shell and they would convert it into a shield and then do weapons training with a short stick or a sword. I always found that interesting. I even see them do it with nunchaku. I found that interesting. I've just never had the opportunity to learn it.
Okay, cool. So now your school, when you first started it, you were in that dance hall. So how many times have you moved locations, and talk just a little bit about your current location, how long you've been there? And
in Hicksville, I only moved 3 times. I was in the dance studio for 2 years, and then we outgrew that because it was very small. It was basically like a little pole building, and I rented a building downtown for a year and had a horrible experience with the landlord, but we won't get into that.
Yeah.
And then I bought a house over by the fairgrounds, and I had a big lot. It was a mobile home, but I didn't care. And I had this 24-foot wide by 42-foot garage, and I converted that into a dojo.
Nice.
And I had the school there until I moved out of Hicksville in 2000.
Okay.
And I ended up in Bryan in 01. My student had a school in Auburn, Indiana. He moved it twice. I had another student that had a school in Kendallville, Indiana, and he was in the same location until he closed. And then when I ended up in Bryan, I taught in my basement at my house for the first few years.
Okay.
And we ended up, I had 22 people going up and down my stairs in my house. That's too many. So I rented a very small location on the end of town. And I ended up, that same location, I ended up renting the full side of it from Really Construction. Just dealt really amazing landlord. The guy was so wonderful to work with me because he knew what it meant to start up a business because he started his own.
Yeah.
I ended up in that full building. So I went from renting a 900 square foot area to renting a 4,000 square foot area.
Nice.
I went from there to a smaller area during the recession of 07, 08 because I lost half of my student count. So I'm like, I can't keep affording this, and he understood that. So I went to a smaller area, was there for 2 years. I did a 2-year lease. That was on the opposite side of Bryan, Ohio. Then we went downtown. I ended up renting from Delton. There was a big area that wasn't being used for anything. It was just a wide open storage facility. So I rented that, and my school grew really big during that time. Then I got tired of spending money with rent. And I said, I need to start looking at getting smart about what I'm doing because I'm blowing all this money every month in rent on something that I'll never get any value out of. So I bought the building that we're in now in 2015.
Okay. And if someone comes to visit your school, what can they expect? What do they see when they walk in the doors?
You walk in, there's a nice little visitor area, there's a front desk area, and then there's a huge gate. And that gate area is on the other side is the dojo, and it's all mats, lots of equipment. We got a little bit of a locker area, and then we have 2 dressing rooms and a bathroom.
Okay.
So, and that's the downstairs. Upstairs is a whole nother dojo, but that's my personal dojo.
Oh, wow. And what's the ratio for students? Is it mostly kids, mostly adults, pretty even?
If I consider teenagers at the age of 13 and older adults, so I'd say we're a 50-50 mix.
Okay. And how many days a week are you teaching right now?
5 days a week.
Okay. Nice.
Monday through Friday.
I'm assuming you have like assistants that help, and so you're not doing everything yourself.
Yeah, I have good black belts. They'll step up when necessary and needed, but I don't rely on them because they have families, they have jobs. It's unfair for me to expect them to teach all the time. I do have one student right now who's teaching on Monday at my Bryan school because I teach in Auburn, Indiana on Mondays. Okay. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm in Auburn. Tuesday, Thursday, I'm in Bryan. And he's a newer black belt, but he's doing really well. His father's one of my higher ranks. His father's a Yandan. And his father was helping teach. And long story short, he broke his leg. So he had to step away from teaching until he got healed. And then my senior black belt, Matt Eddington, who's been with me forever, he has diverticulitis. So he ended up having to have a colon surgery to remove part of his colon. So that eliminated him. So my poor young first degree black belt Gabe got everything thrown on his shoulders.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But he stepped up. I mean, he's done a wonderful job.
That's good.
He's trained with me since he was a little kid.
Okay.
So he knows his stuff. But teaching is not the same as helping out in class. When you're actually in charge of a class, there's a whole different mentality to it.
Yeah, a little bit different. So, and do you offer like a intro thing if people want to do like a free trial class type thing?
I don't do anything free.
Okay.
The reason why is because I don't have time to deal with people that don't know karate.
Makes
with
sense.
As many students as I have, and I teach all the classes when I'm at the dojos, it's just not fair to them.
Mm-hmm.
But I took a lesson a long time ago, back in 1996. I couldn't understand why the new students wouldn't stick around for more than a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave them a free class, and they signed up. They paid for a month, and a couple weeks go by, and I'm not seeing them anymore.
Okay.
And I'm like going, okay, so I'm going to start asking them. So I started calling these parents and calling these adults on the phone and saying, hey, why aren't you coming to karate no more? And they're like, well, I'm kind of overwhelmed because I don't really understand what I'm doing yet. And, things like that. So I created a program where everybody does 3 private classes with me, and it's one-on-one sessions so that they get to know me personally.
Mm-hmm.
And I teach them all the basic foundation of the very first kata, which is Kihon kata, and I teach them the basic punches, basic blocks, basic kicks. So that way, when they come into their first class, they have something they can work on. So they're not just standing around going, I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
Nice.
And I wanted to get rid of that intimidation factor too, because a lot of people are scared to just walk in and go into a dojo. Mm-hmm. They don't know what they're getting into.
Yep.
And that's how I do it. And I charge $49 for that, and that includes the uniform.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
And I would say that we are extremely successful, because I'd say I have an 80% conversion rate to a regular member with that program.
Okay. Wow.
The sirens.
Very cool. That's awesome. Congrats. All right. So any thoughts at all over your with your journey and background of ever writing a martial arts book of any type?
You know how many people ask me that because of my Facebook page?
Yeah.
I've been journaling since 1982.
Well, there you go.
And I have stacks and stacks and stacks of journals. The early years, it was, this is what we did in class. This is what I learned. This is what I need to work on. So they're very, very boring.
Mm-hmm.
But I do go back and read them.
Okay.
And everything. But when I started teaching in 91, I started writing down what I thought, because karate as a whole in this country was changing its direction in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
It was going from being, if I told somebody in 1990, back off, I'm a black belt, I don't want to fight you, but I will if I have to, they would back off in a second.
Yeah.
By 96, they just punch you in the face. I mean, it was like that big of a change. It completely changed the environment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, and I don't really concern myself with the why, but I did start writing in my notes about how people were changing, how students were changing, how the intent of why people joined karate were changing. So do I have any idea if I'll ever write a book? I don't know. Would I like to? Yeah. Probably, but with me being so busy teaching 5 days a week, running 2 dojos right now, it's the furthest thing in the back of my mind.
But if you ever decide to, you pretty much have it all written down. You just got to format it. So that's a pretty good spot to be in if you decide to do it in the future. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. All right. So over your martial arts journey, is there one philosophy that's at the top of your list? It's super important to you.
Yes. And it's written on the walls of both of my dojos, and it's in all my manuals that I've written for my students. It's Nana Karyobi Yaoki. It means 7 times down, 8 times up.
Nice.
I always tell my students that no matter what you're facing in life, no matter how bad it is, even if you got cancer and they're telling you it's terminal, you fight until you have nothing left.
Very cool. I like that. That's a good one. All right. How about a worst martial arts related injury?
Broke my sternum.
Ow. Dang.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into what I broke, because I've broken a lot of stuff. I did knockdown karate for years.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the sternum break was the worst one, mostly because it wasn't snapped all the way through. So I didn't have to have a plate put on it. But it wouldn't heal because I would not stop teaching.
I was just going to ask, how long did it sideline you for? I guess it didn't.
It didn't.
It should have, but it didn't.
Yes. I walked in to class after I broke my sternum, and it was at a karate tournament. I took a full power reverse punch with just perfect placement right at the top, and it snapped it right down the middle.
Wow.
And it was not all the way through, so they would consider this to be a fracture since it wasn't separated. but it was bad enough that it could break at any moment, is what they told me.
Wow.
And breathing was painful. Laughing was painful. Setting, moving, getting up, anything I did hurt. But I walked into class wearing an upper body brace to keep my rib cage contained so I could not move. I literally looked like I was a statue.
Wow.
And I told my students, you guys are going to perform. I'm going to tell you what to fix. I said, this is going to be going on until I can get this thing off. And I did. And me being the idiot that I was, because I was only 26 at the time,
okay,
I would twist, I would throw punches, and I would break it back open again.
Wow.
So it took what would have taken a year to heal, technically good enough for me to, it took 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was still competing in tournaments after I got the thing off, knowing that was broken. I didn't wear a chest protector. I just learned to protect my chest.
So now going through that, knowing what you know, if one of your assistant instructors, one of your black belts had the same injury, would you let them step foot in the dojo until they were healed?
They would not be back in the dojo. And this is my rule. If you break a bone, I don't care what it is, you are going to be cleared by a doctor for physical activity before you get back in here and train.
Nice.
Because
you've grown and you've learned. That's good.
Yeah. And a lot of that stems from how ugly my hands and toes are from breaking them repeatedly and training with them taped up.
Wow.
You know, I literally look like I got arthritis in my hands. So
that's crazy. All right. So what are your thoughts, with traditional background, but you also do compete and stuff. What are your thoughts on like MMA or the UFC? Is that something you're a fan of? Do you enjoy watching that?
Oh, I'm a big fan of MMA.
Yeah.
I was a judge at a lot of the local MMA contests in this area for years.
Me too. I like it.
I love it, but I see it for what it is. It's a combat sport.
Yeah.
You know, it rules, it's got limitations, just like anything. It's not a street fight. It's not the end all be all of anything. But I love the evolution of it because it went from the Gracies proving that BJJ was the ultimate to where strikers started knocking the Gracies out to where you had to have a mixed background to be able to compete in it and excel at it. I think it really opened a lot of people's eyes up.
Yeah.
You know, because the karate I grew up in, we did that.
Yeah.
We went to the ground. We fought.
Yep.
You know, there was no question on that. But it was a rougher time. By the 90s, like I said, everything was evolving. If you were doing karate, the chances that you learned to throw somebody was pretty slim.
Yeah. I remember that. I mean, the first time I learned to throw someone was when I took an Aikido class in college. That was very, very different than the Shotokan and Tungsudo I had been training up until that point.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. I did Aikido for a while, and it was interesting.
Yeah. I tell you what, the best thing about that, because I took it for almost a year, my freshman year of college, was it taught me how to fall properly.
Yes.
Which was very valuable. Because then I remember it was like 6 months or a year later when I got into Taekwondo, and they were teaching us how to fall and stuff. And I had already known how to do it, and it was a lot easier going through that, having that Aikido background. So
yeah, it's kind of funny because the Gojo Ryu dojo that I trained in, that was one of our first lessons, was learning how to fall correctly.
Nice.
I mean, we did 6 different methods of slapping out that he said that we needed to know because the self-defense we did always ended with taking the person to the ground and finishing them off. It wasn't about not out standing up. So
yeah, and I don't remember in Tungsudo and Shotokan when I was 10 years old and when I was a teenager in high school. I don't remember. I mean, maybe they did, but I don't remember learning how to fall in those styles. But it was much different back then. So it was the 84 through 90. So a little different. But all right, I have a few fun questions we use to wrap up the interview. We're just talking about MMA a little bit. Let's just say you decided you were going to step into the octagon. You were going to put on the gloves and fight. What's your walk-up music going to be? What song's playing as you're taking that walk into the cage? Oh,
that's a good question because I have no idea. There's a song by a Christian rock band called Skillet that I do like, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Okay. I work out, and it plays in the background a lot in my dojo workout playlist. And I got my computer in front of me. I can look it up. I can't remember. But it was a really good song about years ago. Got real popular.
I'm not familiar with that group.
With Skillet?
Yeah, no. I worked in radio for a long time, but I've never. I just Googled them, but I've never heard them before. So I see Monster, Feel Invincible, Psycho in my head.
Invincible.
Okay.
Yeah, Invincible. That was the song that I was thinking of. I like that song.
Nice. I will have to check it out when we're done. Now I kind of want to hear it.
Yeah, they're a really popular Christian rock band, and when people tell me they've never heard of them, I'm surprised because they're very well known.
Yeah. See, I grew up, I'm 52, but I grew up listening to like 50s and 60s music. And then, of course, I grew up in the 80s and was all into the 80s stuff. But I don't listen to a lot of current stuff. And even now, I just dumped like 700 songs onto a hard drive to play in my vehicle. And they pretty much range from like the 50s through the 90s. Rap, hip hop, rock and roll, pop, doo-wop. Very nice mixture. So I will check it out.
I was a hair band guy.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, I was even in a band for a while.
Yeah, we did one of the MMA fights I judged. God, who was the band that played Firehouse? They played after one of the fights. People who paid to go to the fights and all the officials that were there, we got to stay and watch Firehouse afterwards. So
that was my 26th birthday present, seeing them and Vixen play at Pierre's.
Vixen, wow. Okay, I still have it. I have a cassette single from Vixen.
Yeah, well, they only had, I think, one album that was ever well known.
Was it like Edge of a Broken Heart? Was that the song?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I bought that cassette single, so that's funny. All right, who are 3, 4, 5 names you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
My personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts, definitely Kyoshi Eddie Bethea. That man's just so humble and such a great martial artist, and he knows so much.
Okay.
Right next to him would be the one everybody's going to say, Chuck Norris.
Yeah.
I met Chuck Norris. I got to work out with him a few times.
Wow.
Just the nicest guy you'd ever meet. But geez, man, oh Pete, I'll tell you, that guy had the sneakiest doggone hook kick I ever saw in my life.
Yes, he did. I've seen that on video many times.
Wow. And can I do people that are ancient?
You can do anyone you want. It's your Mount Rushmore.
Definitely would put Yatsumi Anku Tosu on there, because without him, karate would have died.
Okay.
He's the savior. He's considered the father of modern karate. But if he wouldn't have started teaching it in the public education system and made it popular in the Japanese eye, we wouldn't have karate today. And then I would definitely go back to Sokan Bushi Matsumura, because that man, even though everything's based on oral legend, but if you go to Okinawa, he's like the Chuck Norris of Okinawa, even though it was the late 1800s. But this guy, he was the real deal. But he and Tode Sakagawa were two that actually started organizing karate into, these are the kata that I'm going to pick, and this is the kata that I'm going to teach, and this is the principles I'm going to teach it by. They developed the very first setup of how we teach karate today, where you got a list of kata, you got a list of techniques, and you got a list of standards, and you got a list of application.
Okay. That's a good Mount Rushmore. I like it. All right. How about a favorite martial arts book?
Ooh, wow. I have a library of like 5,000 books and videos. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I'll be honest with you. That is a very tough question.
If you had maybe like a newer student come up and said, I want to read my first martial arts book, what do you recommend? Is there one that pops to your mind would be the first one you'd tell them to read?
There is one, because I really like the way it's written and the fact that it was based on historical research and facts. It's called Shotokan Secrets.
Oh.
It is a in-depth, pretty thick book, and there's two versions. There's the original and the revised edition, because when the author found out some of the things that he published in the original were not as factual as he thought, he went back and revised the edition, which is one of the reasons why I like it, because he's not just one of those guys, I'm going to write a book like Peter Urban did.
Yeah.
I'm going to put in there my ideas and my thoughts, even though there's no truth behind it, but we'll leave it at that. But that is one that I do recommend all my black belts read, is that Shotokan Secret is just a really unique look into the development from Okinawa through Japanese karate.
Is this the one by Bruce Clayton?
Yes.
Okay.
So, I got it.
I've never read that one. I'm going to have to bookmark that.
Hang on 1 second here. I'm actually walking through my office right now.
Nice.
I gave it to one of my students. He never brought it back. I'm going to have to call him.
Okay.
So I have two versions. I have two books, though, and I don't know where the other one is. The other one, I think one of my black belts has right now.
Okay. I might have to order that one and try to find time to read it.
Yeah, but that definitely would be one that I would recommend. And then some of the other books that are my favorites, people never heard of.
Okay.
Because you got to kind of know the person, like the Okinawa no Bushi no Te, written by Ron Lindsay. I really like that book.
Nice.
And if you're into history, the Karate Uchinade, that one's written by Itzik Cohen. He's a relatively new author who kind of came on the scene in the last 5-6 years. And if you're into history, this guy did the research. I mean, he was foot on the ground in Okinawa talking to masters, talking to people, and didn't take any hearsay or oral legends. He said, if there's not facts, it's not going in my book.
Okay.
And if you're into historical references to martial arts, that one is impeccable.
Nice. All right. I will add some of those to my list also. All right. How about a favorite martial arts video game? Did you ever get into gaming?
No, I didn't, but I was definitely a karate champ guy.
Nice.
Yeah, fun story on that one.
Yeah.
Short story too. In my area, we have Fort Wayne, Indiana. They're the biggest city close to us, about 45-minute drive from where I grew up.
Yep.
And they had the Gold Rush arcade. You know, everybody went to arcades in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
And I played karate champ. Every time I went to the mall, my parents would just drop me in there with a handful of quarters because they knew where I'd be when they were ready to leave. And I would stay in there. And I had the high score on that video game from the day I started playing it in 1984 all the way until the Gold Rush closed and they tore it out of the mall. And I went there their last opening day just to make sure I still had the high score.
That's
and
awesome.
I put a quarter in, and right at the top it said the karate guy Franz.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, I'm still the champ. I get my.
You should have bought it from them if they were closing.
Oh, dude, I was poor at that point in time. I didn't have anything. I mean, I had nothing. I was so poor. I mean, I was a mac and cheese made with water guy.
Okay. That is awesome. How about a favorite martial arts TV show?
Believe it or not, my favorite, if I had to pick any of the TV shows that have ever been made, it would be The Master with Ron Van Cleef.
I love it. That's one season, I think it only got. It was such a good show.
It only had one season, but man, the martial arts that were in that were unreal. The fight scenes were good, but the storyline was incredible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Sho Kasugi was in a few episodes. Yeah, it was so good. Yeah. No, I have the pilot episode on DVD with Demi Moore. That's awesome.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
All right. How about a favorite martial arts movie?
Well, I'm biased on that one. It's always, for me, it's always going to be the Karate Kid, the original.
Same with me.
You know,
yep.
Just because it came out and it exploded in a time when karate wasn't that popular, it made karate popular. So I was in heaven because now we got, instead of 11, 12 people in the dojo, we got 30, 40 people in the dojo. So I was super happy, but I was also happy because tournaments exploded because of that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you used to go to a tournament and I'd have 11, 12 kids in my division. Now we got 30 kids in my division.
Nice.
You know, and that meant that if you won, you were the best. You were facing the toughest and the biggest groups. Yeah, it's not like today where you walk in, you got 3 people and you get 3rd place.
Yeah.
Back then, it exploded. But I also have a personal attachment to that as well.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. Through the Cobra Kai series, the uniform that Team Miyagi wore.
Yep.
Yeah, I designed that for Century Martial Arts.
Really?
It's called the Kaizen. Yeah, it's called the Kaizen Elite Gi. I ended up working with Leon Rogers. He's not there anymore. He used to be the vice president, but we ended up developing a traditional Okinawan cut uniform, which is something Century did not have.
Okay.
And it got selected for the Cobra Kai series for the Team Miyagi to wear.
That's awesome. So did you enjoy Cobra Kai then, the series?
Oh yeah, I still watch it all the time.
Me too.
I mean, all the time.
That is cool. Actually, I was on vacation in Utah visiting my son. He was graduated from college, and I forgot what store we were at. Just looking through the clearance rack, and for $5, I got an Eagle Fang Karate T-shirt. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I have quite the extensive collection of Cobra Kai and Karate Kid collectibles because that's what my students get me for my birthdays and holidays, and I buy them all the time myself too. I'm terrible.
That's one thing I've always told myself I was going to buy one, and I never have. I've always wanted to buy one of the sleeveless black Cobra Kai, Doughbox karate gis. I don't know why I never have. I just think that'd be cool to own one.
Well, you should have got with Century last year in December. They were selling them for like $15 wholesale.
Oh man. Yeah, I missed out. I missed out. Dang.
They went on as soon as Cobra Kai ended. The Miyagi Do-gi and the Cobra Kai gi with Century, they got rid of them all.
Oh, that's too bad.
You never know; they might have some sitting around still.
Hey, Michael Dillard was a former guest. Maybe I'll shoot him an email and see if he has any left in boxes anywhere. I'll buy a couple.
Senior or junior?
A junior. Yep.
Junior. Yeah. They're both great guys.
Yeah.
They are.
I've never met Senior, but yeah, Junior was one of the guests. I think in my first 2 years he was on the show. So. Yeah, I
got to meet him when we launched the Kaizen gi was originally called the Kata Elite, which I didn't agree with the name. That was their choice. And they flew me out to Oklahoma, and I was in the picture. I was the guy they took pictures of, and I was in the Century catalog wearing that gi.
Nice.
And I met Senior and Junior both, and just amazing people. Yeah. And they treated me so well because I'm a nobody, and they treated me like I was a movie star while I was there. It was unreal.
That's cool. All right, final question. This one doesn't have to be a martial arts movie. Any movie you've seen in your whole life, a favorite movie fight scene.
There is a movie that came out a few years ago called Kuro Obi, means Black Belt. It was a JKA movie, finance movie. It stars the guy that's on Kurobi, the social media channel.
Okay.
And then Mitatsu Yagi's son's in it too, from Okinawa, Goju guy.
Okay.
The last fight scene in that movie is the most realistic karate, hands-on fight scene you're ever going to see in your entire life.
Really?
Yeah, because they were not pulling their punches.
Okay.
It's amazing. The choreograph through the whole movie is great. But it takes place in the era when Japan was basically taking over the military. They abolished the samurai. So I say 1920s, right around there.
Mm-hmm.
But the fight scenes are phenomenal.
Okay. I will definitely have to check that out. That one I have not seen.
Yeah, you might be able to see the fight scene on YouTube too. The very end of that movie, I believe, still floating around on YouTube out there.
I will check it out. That's awesome. Well, Stephen, before I let you go, is there anything I forgot to ask you, we forgot to mention, or just last minute stuff you want to get out there before we wrap it up?
No, the only thing for people that are out there, that if you have a school and you're teaching traditional, because traditional is not easy to maintain your integrity, maintain your status and everything, not sell out as people would call it, I just tell them, stick to your guns. I mean, I didn't think I could do this either. And I'm not the brightest, most intelligent businessman on the face of the planet, but I have 2 dojos and I can teach full time. I'm not driving a Porsche and I don't live in a $500,000 house, but I'm very happy and I get to meet amazing people and I get to teach their kids. The kids that I taught I'm teaching their kids.
That's cool.
Believe in yourself and stick it through. And if you really, truly believe in what you're doing traditional wise, the students will come. You just got to get the reputation built up, and that takes years.
I like it. Seriously, man, this has been so much fun. I know you were like, you've never done a podcast before. You weren't sure how it was going to go, but I've enjoyed this so much. I love your story and I hope we can stay in touch, but I think the listeners are really going to enjoy this too.
Well, hey, I really appreciate it. I'm honored to be asked to do it. I had no idea. Like I said, you made it really easy, so I appreciate that.
Wrap up today's episode by taking your own training to the next level with Martial Theory by Steve Perlman, the book that's redefining martial arts thinking. Find Martial Theory on Amazon today. Join the worldwide movement at martialtheoryu.com, where you'll find Q&A sessions, live events, and direct guidance from Steve himself. Use code EverydayMA for 20% off for life. That's martialtheoryu.com, code EverydayMA. Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.